And now the judges will introduce themselves.
Good morning, students from New York. My name is Maria Garnett. I live in Richmond, Virginia. I'm a state government policy professional. My current role is as a policy advisor for the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services, but I have a lot of experience doing nonpartisan policy analysis and evaluating the performance of government programs for the Virginia legislature. This is my third year of involvement with We the People. It's great to be here with you.
Good morning, students and teacher. My name is Petra Al-Soufi. I'm the Outreach and Partnerships Manager at the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding. I'm also on the board of the Michigan Center for Civic Education. And many years ago, I was in your place as a student in We the People program. So I'm happy to see you here participate. And I know it's going to be an experience that will stick around with you for a very long time.
Good morning, New York. My name is Dan Wong. I am a retired attorney and former judge. I'm on the National Board of Directors for the Center for Civic Education, and I live in Boise, Idaho. I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm looking forward to listening to your testimony.
Go ahead and introduce yourselves and your coach/teacher.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Alisea.
Hi, my name is Kiosha Folks.
Tucker.
Hi, my name is Fatima Quadra. Our teacher is Mr. Pittman, and we're Unit 6.
And just really quickly, Kushi, could you try to repeat something? I could barely hear you at all. I just want to make sure your sound's okay. Yeah, we can't hear you.
Oh.
Wait, we heard oh.
I can hear you now. Can you just like say a test sentence?
Kushi, it seems as though it came on after a little bit. Maybe try unmuting and keep talking.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Okay, yes, that is better. I guess I will increase my volume to try to hear you a little bit better. If you're able to increase your microphone volume at all, that might also help.
Or speak a little bit louder or clearer. Thank you.
Speak louder and Kushi, I would say don't mute your microphone when you're not talking. Keep it turned on all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, if we have a lot of feedback, we might need her to mute, but we will figure it out. You all are already rolling with the punches, and this is great. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with reading your Unit 6 question. President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist." Do you agree or disagree? Why? What disagreements did the founders have about a standing army, and are they relevant today? And to what extent should there be an international U.S. military presence? You may begin.
We are part of the world's most feared and trusted force. We must engage our brain before we engage our weapon. James Mattis. Historian Douglas Brinkley stated that in his farewell address, President Eisenhower emphasized cautions against the military-industrial complex by exhorting Americans that they should never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. President Eisenhower believed that good judgment and reasoning must trump corporate interests in order to prevent misplaced power and unwarranted influence. Eisenhower's warning came in the midst of the Cold War that revolutionized how we viewed and invested in national defense.
After World War II, America transformed the Department of War to the Department of Defense and made a commitment to forever be ready for the outbreak of war. It was this commitment and transformation that led to an increase in the power and influence of the defense industry and to what Eisenhower warned. History has shown that President Eisenhower was prophetic in his warnings, and his words must be remembered in the modern zeitgeist. As former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates stated, modern-day America has an insatiable appetite for bigger international military presence.
The debate today over the size of our defense is a continuation of the constitutional discourse over a standing army that reaches back to colonial times. According to Dr. Gregory Foster, a professor of national security studies, The founding fathers had a pronounced fear and antipathy towards standing armies because of the possibility of domestic oppression and international adventurism by those in power, the drain on public resources, and the deviant behavior of the military. Founders such as James Madison and Samuel Adams agreed that a professional army will not long be safe companions of liberty of the people, as it will cause domestic oppression.
These disagreements are not relevant today, as we are no longer concerned of the US military threatening our democracy, but rather it has taken upon a new form in which we are concerned about our large international military presence. Currently, $723 billion in federal tax funds is allocated to defense funding, which supports the United States' 5,000 bases, 5 million weapons, and increasing involvement throughout the world. According to John Glasser, an associate director of foreign policy, America's forward deployed military posture incurs substantial costs and disadvantages. He believes while encouraging resentment towards the nations, our international presence does not effectively prevent nuclear proliferation and direct attacks. Ultimately, the modern evolution of this debate asks to what extent there should be an international military presence.
The United States, which has 2017 had military bases in over 70 countries, has the biggest military in the world. The US should decrease their international military presence while not eliminating its presence. According to the Cato Institute, an American think tank, the former reasons for having a large military presence to aid allies and prevent foreign attacks do not have much as an impact due to modern technology. The technology that the US has will decrease response times to an imposing threat.
In addition, according to James Goldgear, a professor of international relations, America's alliances have continually adapted and evolved enough to handle international threats. As stated by Andrew Bacevich, a professor of international relations and history, occupying countries in the Islamic world exacerbates the threat rather than reduces it. He explains that our current justification for our military involvement, specifically the war in Afghanistan, assumes that Afghans are incapable of managing their own affairs and that our presence can make Afghanistan governable, despite the lack of evidence to support it.
Bacevich proposes removing troops and creating incentives, encouraging good behavior on their part. He emphasizes that the more preoccupied we are with the Middle East, the less attention we give to far more important issues, such as climate change and other domestic issues.
President Eisenhower's warning had started debates regarding the United States military involvement. 50 years later, the debates still continue. And as stated by Jerome B. Wisner, it is no longer a question of controlling a military-industrial complex, but rather of keeping the United States from becoming a totally military culture. You're now ready for questioning.
Great, thank you so much. If I heard correctly, you mentioned that there is no longer as much of a concern about the military threatening democracy here in the United States. But I think about the events in Lafayette Square last summer, and that makes me question that a little bit. So can you defend your position a little bit more? Why should we not be worried about the military affecting our democracy here at home?
Considering that veterans do not have as much mental health support and they can use what they've learned in the military to terrorize many places, such as in different shootings, I still believe that they haven't enforced directly upon everyday citizens domestic oppression the way the founders believed that they would, in which they thought that such as the Quartering Act and how they had the soldiers be placed in their homes and regulating their daily lives. They felt they could be domestically oppressed the way Britain had oppressed them, but that doesn't affect us the way that it did within the past.
Continuing off with what my colleague said, I agree with her, in which the founders believed that we would be oppressed by the military in a different way. And because that threat is no longer there, we don't need as much of a domestic military presence as we do in international.
Thank you. My follow-up question is, considering there are reports of military members joining or being part of domestic terrorist organizations, or at least former military members, and we saw that as part of January 6th, attacks. Do you think that poses a different threat to our democracy? And a second part to that question, if that's not a threat, if that's not a domestic threat, and a threat is our international engagement or military international engagement, under what circumstances should the U.S. be waging international war?
I believe that domestic terrorist organizations where former military members are a part of are a threat to our democracy and a threat to our nation as a whole. We should be on the watch for those, but we shouldn't overwhelm the domestically with military presence, as it will incite more fear into citizens, and that we should be more watchful of it because it's close to home. As we said in our statement, we do have technology that can have a rapid response time for international threats, but we would have a harder time stopping an attack domestically since it's happening on our own soil.
To address your second question, I think that we should set certain standards in engaging internationally, such as following the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which specifically states the human rights that everyone is valued to have. And if these human rights are being not represented in countries, then we should engage. And I also think that we should set standards in which we involve in other countries, such as setting goals and specific things that we want to achieve before rather just going and engaging in something that we don't really have anything organized with.
Off to what Kiosha said, an example of an infringement to human rights could be like a genocide, which can be currently seen right now in China with the Uyghur Muslims who are going through what could be called like a violation of human rights. And in instances like those in genocides, there should definitely be some intervention on US's part.
Just to add on to what my colleague Kushi said on genocides, I believe that the US should have taken a part of or to help end the Rwandan genocide a few years back, because the United States had the technology in order to reduce the amount of deaths, because hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost. But according to the UN, they didn't consider it to be a genocide, even though many lives were lost during it. So the US could have stopped or just reduced the vast numbers of lives lost.
So, quite frankly, when I read this question about Eisenhower and his quote regarding the military-industrial complex, I actually kind of thought it was kind of old school. Should we be more concerned about the technology military complex? Any thoughts on that?
I do believe we should be concerned about the technology military presence. Technology has improved greatly since Eisenhower was president, and because of that, our military has improved. We have things such as drone strikes, nuclear weapons now, and that could create more damage and have a greater impact than when Eisenhower was president. So we should keep an eye on the technology military presence throughout the world.
Going off of what my colleague Fatima mentioned, I think that it is an increasing issue concerning how advanced technology has occurred, such as nuclear proliferation and North Korea's incentives to create their weaponry and making it bigger, in which they are testing nukes and could possibly damage our environment and society. So I think that this issue of the military-industrial complex is really important to current human society.
I agree with both what my colleagues said, in that US is already taking count of that on the nuclear warfare that might happen, including the invention of the nuclear defense system known as THAAD. It's the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, which is in place in some countries like Guam already, but they want to place it in South Korea in order to protect ourselves from possible North Korean missile strikes and even Chinese missile strikes. So US has already taken account of these possible technological advancements, and I think we should continue.
Thank you.
Circling back to something you all talked about a little bit with veterans and how the specific threat from veterans here in the United States is different than what the founders had in mind potentially. If veterans are not getting the kind of mental health services or other health services that they need, is there a role for citizens, paying more in taxes so that veterans can get that good treatment? Or tell me, what solution would you offer as you're talking about reducing an international presence to help address that domestic issue with the military?
I think definitely that we should play a role in protecting these troops' mental health and like providing some type of care because they are protecting for us overseas, and that can be very traumatic to them. And yes, increasing taxes to make sure that we have more funding, or allocating some of the funding that we use for the military and putting it towards their mental health or any other things that they need. I think we should definitely do that because I feel like it's our responsibility if they're going to be protecting us overseas.
Additionally, historically, after World War II, the GI Bill was put in place to help veterans come and reestablish themselves within society by providing them like houses and other things to help them
That
be.
is time. That's
Can I
fine.
continue? Thank you. And I think that
Sorry,
we should just establish.
Kiyosha, the timekeepers are being really strict about time this year. So yes, thank you so much for that initial thought. Amazing job, all of you. This is, the first event of the day, and you never would have known from just how confident you all were and how well you responded to a pretty wide variety of questions from the judges, including potentially questions that maybe you hadn't been expecting. So I just really want to commend you on keeping your composure, even when it was maybe a little bit of a stressful situation. One piece of feedback that I do have is, with 4 people on the team, it can be a little bit challenging to make sure that everybody, is equally participating in that question and answer round. I think towards the end, you all really did make sure that everybody was chiming in and answering the judges' questions. But I encourage you to just really keep that in mind. Again, I'm super impressed by the job that you all did this morning, and I hope you feel great about it.
To add to what Maria said, I think you all did really well. One thing that really stood out for me was when Kayisha was, sorry if I mispronounced your name, told me which part of my question she was going to answer. So you specified the part that you were going to address and stuck to the information that without dismissing the other parts of the question. So that's really good strategy. You all spoke on areas that you were comfortable with. And in your opening statement, you had really, you picked side, you provided evidence, you had support there. Same with your follow-up questions. You answered the question that you knew and were comfortable with, and you provided, and each one of you kind of picked an area of strength that was your focus. So keep that up. Great work.
So it's always exciting when we start off the day with a very good, excellent performance. And that's what your testimony and presentation today did for me. You answered the question and it was very easy to follow along. I will tell you that we'll listen to 12 testimonies today. And it's important that we're able to, quite frankly, follow along and recognize that you're able to answer the question, and you did. You had lots of quotes that were applicable to answering the question. That's very good, because a lot of times, sometimes the quotes that are thrown out are not applicable, but I felt that all of your quotes were very applicable. Very good performance. I think you're going to go a long way. Thank you very much.